It's an important time. It's an important topic, no doubt. And some of the things I've heard here, in addition to what I already know, make me think even harder and longer about the issues facing mental health in particular. You know, I'm pleased that the General Assembly decided to refocus on mental health issues. But it shouldn't take a Virginia Tech for that to happen. We shouldn't have to have those tragedies first before we make that focus. We need to be proactive. We need to be out front. The mental health industry, years ago, when most states decided to deinstitutionalize, and Virginia too, to some extent, although, as was noted earlier by Mr. McKean, we still maintain state facilities. Mental health service providers and community service boards were given a huge task. And that task was to place as many of these people back in the community as you possibly can, with functional skills and the support programs necessary to get along in society. Right away, the knee-jerk reaction was, they're releasing these people into the community. And you know as well as I do that the image mental health projects is not always a good one. And for years, how did we treat these folks? We locked them in hospital wards, and they stayed there. It was a life sentence for a lot of people who shouldn't have been there. And so when it was time to try to rehabilitate them enough to turn them back to the community, there was some fear from people in the community. We dealt with it on the Stanton City Council a couple of years back with a project by Valley Community Services Board to build a clinic and residential housing in one of our neighborhoods. We met strong opposition from the neighborhood. But we did it, we supported it, and we did it because it was the right thing to do. And that's what you have to do, and in the process you have to try to educate the public. You have to try to change that image. I heard the word stigma used. There is a stigma. We can't deny it. We can only try to change it through the education of the people who don't understand. I doubt that any of us are very far removed from mental illness. I'm going to hazard a guess that we all know someone, a family member, a friend, a colleague, an acquaintance, who's somehow affected. And because it affects us all, it is a bipartisan issue. And it requires bipartisan solutions. Nobody has all the answers. No one side has all the solutions. The real cure for this will be solved somewhere in the middle, when everybody can get together for the greater good. The big question, as you heard Mr. Lewis allude to earlier, this is going to be an eventful week in terms of budgets. And the big question is, how do we find the necessary funding? Where do we find the necessary funding, especially in times like these? Programs need to be expanded. Programs for youth need to be expanded. And we're barely holding on, being able to maintain the programs we have in place. So where's that funding going to come from? I know in the city of Stanton, in this most recent budget, we had to cut $22,000. That was a painful cut to the Community Services Board. That's small potatoes compared to what you felt from the state and what you're likely to feel again. I think the answer lies in making government more efficient. And I think government needs to be more responsive to the needs of its citizens, particularly those who need the help the most. I was in the military, and there were a couple of important lessons that I learned in time spent with the Navy and the Marines. I was a hospital corpsman. And one of the greatest lessons I learned was about teamwork, that's how things get done. That's how you can be most effective. And obviously, we're partners in this. Government has to partner with the mental health industry, or we're never going to get this done. It just won't happen. The other thing that I learned is that you leave no man behind. And we can't leave these people behind. We have an obligation to those less fortunate, to those who suffer from mental illness through no fault of their own. It's the obligation of government, it's the obligation of good citizens to retrieve them and not leave them behind. My Christian faith teaches me that we have a responsibility to these who we refer to as the least of these sometimes. About 15 years ago, 16 maybe, I made a career switch and decided to become a school teacher. And then 10 years ago, I decided to become a special education teacher because I wanted to serve that population. It's been a very eye-opening and challenging experience for me. But the rewards have been so great that it's easily offset. But what I see are some of the same things that mental health professionals see. Substance abuse, obviously. We deal with some of the same clients, certainly some similar clients. Substance abuse that manifests itself in the form of those intellectual disabilities, traumatic brain injuries, intellectual disabilities. And I'd love to tell you that it's becoming less of a problem, but it's not. And I can't tell you that. What I can tell you is that the work of those who serve the mental health community is more important now than it's ever been. The new Western State Hospital, which will be constructed soon, we all hope. It's something I'm very proud to be part of, along with my colleagues from City Council and Stanton, who had a hand in completing that project. I recently toured over there, and I was amazed and very much impressed with what's going on. This is another problem because the community doesn't know it. It's the best kept secret in the world. There are good things happening in Western right now. And they're doing it in a facility, well, it's beyond the pale for the kind of services they're providing. There's much good work taken there, and we need to find similar cost-effective ways to assist community services boards, organizations like the Arc of Augusta, all those mental health service providers that are out there. There have to be ways to do it. I hope that in the coming months, in the coming years, that I'll have an opportunity to do that at the state level, to be an advocate for mental health. I know how important the mental health industry is to this area. Western State, for example, for years and years was the largest employer Stanton had. Still is one of the largest. And I understand the importance of that. I understand the importance of those jobs. I also understand the importance of returning these people to the community where they can live lives that are meaningful, not only to them, but to the rest of society. That's our task. That's what we're charged with, and that's what we need to do. And it can't be a question of where the money's going to come from. It has to be a question of how we're going to make that money come from somewhere to get this job done. Thank you very much for the opportunity.